Hello, and welcome back to the Wisdom of Warhammer channel. And today, we're going to be talking about the Arch Betrayer and former second in command of the Dark Angels, Luther. We're going over his time before he found the line and when he trained the line, his time during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. Then we will discuss his time as the prisoner of the 40k Dark Angels and his new role as a Dark Oracle, then his escape from the Rock. But before we get started, I want to say that all things Warhammer is under the ownership of Games Workshop and Black Library, so go support them. Now, let us begin the video on Luther. Luther was born on the planet of Caliban during the time of the Techno Night Orders and the outbreak of chaos-corrupted beasts that roamed the forests. Luther was born in Al-Duruk, the future fortress monastery of the Dark Angels, but he was given to another lord. When he turned 21, he and his fellow knights encountered the Horn of Ruin, a powerful and dangerous great beast that caused the deaths of 2 towns and many of his knight brethren. After this, he came back to Al-Duruk and became a knight. Later in his service, during a patrol with his knight brothers, he ran into the lion and studied the feral man. He stopped his fellow knights from killing the lion. He then brought the lion under his wing. As time went on, the lion passed his fellow knights and became the best knight of the order and on Caliban. Then the lion and Luther came up with the idea to unite the orders of Caliban to exterminate the great beasts of the planet. Luther was the one to convince the knight orders to join the lion. The war went on for 10 years and was massive. A lot of knights died, but eventually the great beasts became extinct after the death of the knights of Lupus and the beasts they captured. Then shortly after this, the emperor came and gave the lion the First Legion, and renamed them after a Calibanite legend, the Dark Angels. But as the Dark Angels were collecting aspirants for the Legion, Luther and some of the older knights could not become Astartes, but they underwent surgery to become enhanced soldiers, but not fully Astartes. When the Legion was ready to move to the stars, Luther was still second in command due to his knowledge and skill in the Legion. He still felt that he was looked down upon because he was not fully Astartes, even though he was successful and still served as second in command of the Lion. Luther did serve in the Great Crusade well, but his jealousy of the Lion and his former junior knights who now towered above him came to a breaking point. When the Lion, Luther, and the Dark Angels arrived at the planet of Shorosh, the Lion met with the diplomatic party sent by the Shoroshi government. Luther was looking in the ship the Shoroshi arrived in, and saw a nuke on the ship. Luther came at a crossroad, and one road was launching the nuke away in space, saving the lion, or leaving it in there and letting the lion die, and Luther taking command. He chose the first option, but it was at the last minute, and the nuke caused small damage to the Dark Angel's flagship. After this, the people of Soros were destroyed, and the lion exiled Luther and 500 Dark Angels back to Caliban. During his exile to Caliban, Luther had begun reading forbidden books about the great beasts and the power they held. The knowledge of the books intrigued Luther and made him invested as time went on. But when the planet Zaramund became a war zone, Horus called upon the Dark Angels of Caliban to aid him in the battle, and Luther agreed and led the force of Dark Angels. After the battle, the Lion arrived and chastised Luther for disobeying his command, and this was in front of Horus and his commanders. But a gift of friendship would greet the Grand Master of Caliban, and this was Caiaphas Callus of the Death Guard and Erebus of the Word Bearers. Erebus gave him a book with the lore of chaos, and the same one he read from the Knights of Lupus. After the conversation, Luther fell further into the lore of chaos and started doing rituals. His effort drew the attention of the Chaos Gods, but the Stranger of Ways was the most interested in the Grand Master. He gave Luther a taste of the power of the warp. But as time went on, he prepared for the return of the Lion and corrupted the other Grand Masters of the Order and killed the ones who refused the offer. Now this decision would consume Luther and make him bitter toward the Lion and eventually come to the destruction of Caliban and the Dark Angels' civil war. The Lion returned to Caliban, still grieving from the Horus Heresy and the entombment of the Emperor on the Golden Throne. But as his fleet arrived in orbit, Luther ordered the attack on the Lion. The lion, in his mental state, raged and launched his forces in order in the bombardment of Caliban, and he wanted all the betrayers to be slaughtered. Luther waited for the lion to arrive, and when the lion found him, he saw that Luther was filled with the chaos power. And this began the duel between the two former friends. The power Luther had was on the level of a Primarch, and he matched the lion, eventually beating his former friend down. He finally saw what he was doing and gave up the power of chaos, and the chaos gods were mad. A warp storm arrived, and with the bombardment of the lion's fleet, the planet of Caliban died that day. Luther was found by the Dark Angels and chained in the darkest dungeon on the rock, the ruins of Alderuk, and now the mobile fortress monastery of the Dark Angels. Luther served as the Dark Oracle of the Dark Angels, and only the Supreme Grand Masters of the Dark Angels and their successor chapters knew about this dark secret. For 10,000 years, Luther had dark visions, and he told the Supreme Grand Masters about the things he saw, and the visions turned out to be true, and he even helped find some of the fallen. During the end of the 41st millennium, the rock was attacked by a demon prince by the name of Maribus, but it was a diversion, so the Dark Angels focused on the demon prince and his forces. Azrael, the current chapter master of the Dark Angels, realized that this was a diversion and ran to Luther's cell and saw that the defenses and ruins were destroyed, and saw that a group of fallen snuck in and rescued Luther. Now the Dark Oracle is free in the universe, gathering his fallen, which is close to a legion size. But with the lion back, now will Luther go to the lion to face his judgment, and will his fallen join the lion, or are they only loyal to Luther? Only time will tell. Now that we have gotten to the end of the lower part of the video on the former Grand Master and the Arch Betrayer Luther, we will now go into the lessons we can learn from this legendary figure of the Dark Angels. Now, before Luther turned into a legend on Caliban for his feats as a knight of the Order, and even before he became a knight, life on Caliban was hard and brutal, with the great beasts, and Luther was trained to survive the wilds of Caliban. That meant he was trained as a swordsman and hunter, and as time went on, he became a skilled leader in the Order. But the first lesson is to know basic skills that are vital to a goal. For example, Luther had to know how to do a multitude of skills that made him survive the planet of Caliban. When he was out on the wilds hunting great beasts, he had to be a good tracker and a good marksman. When he had to use his sword, he was able to use his swordsman skills that he learned to defeat the opponent. As he became a knight, he learned how to be a good leader, and then he learned how to use diplomacy when he dealt with lords and other knight orders. So the lesson here is to be talented in skills that you need for your specific goal or goals. So look at the goal that you're looking at and see what skills are needed for, and then start looking at if you have those skills or not. If you don't, then look up how to acquire those skills. For example, I like to be as healthy as possible, and the skills that I have learned to make me healthy are martial arts, weightlifting, and basic knowledge of nutrition. My goal of being healthy has made me learn 3 more skills that can help me in other goals and other forms of life. So just like Luther, his goal was to be a knight, and he learned the skills. And then when he became a part of the Legion, the skills he learned were able to help him in the stars. What you should do is look at the goal and then find the skills needed and look for ways to get those skills and learn them so you can make the jump in your goal. The second lesson from Luther is to not let jealousy rule you. Jealousy is defined as thoughts and feelings of insecurity, fear, concern, resentment, and other feelings. When Luther saw the junior knights of the Order were becoming Astartes, elevating them above Luther, he became a bit jealous, but not too jealous. Luther was too old to undergo the surgery to become an Astartes, but he had surgery to bring him close to the level of the Astartes. He was still a high-ranking member of the Legion, but he felt inadequate when he was around his brothers that he trained. But he also felt jealous of the Lion, because the Lion became a legend on Caliban, but before that, Luther was the greatest man in Caliban. When the lion was found and passed all of his fellow knights, and even Luther, he became jealous of the lion's power and skill. These feelings became clear when he debated on letting the nuke that was on the lion's ship go off, killing the lion so that Luther could take over. After Shorosh, Lion exiled Luther and some of the Dark Angels to train the recruits. The jealousy and resentment grew over the coming decades until the destruction of Caliban. Some jealousy is good because it can promote competition, but too much jealousy, like that in the case of Luther and the Lion. Luther felt jealous of the recognition that the Lion was receiving when he led the Order and the Dark Angels. Controlling your jealousy means that you must acknowledge it and do not let it rule you, and find a way to release it so it doesn't cause damage to the relationship. If you are in a relationship and feel jealous, I would tell the person you're concerned that led to your jealousy. I do think Luther regrets what he did to the Legion and his brother, and is seeking the Lion to judge him for his crimes. Hopefully, when the Lion reunites with Luther, he will forgive his brother and acknowledge the jealousy that Luther felt and apologize. Now we have come to the end of the video, and in the next video we'll be talking about Azrael, the current Supreme Grand Master at the Dark Angels, and how we can learn from the Keeper of Truth. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, share the video with someone who would enjoy this. If you are new to the channel, subscribe if you want to see more videos. I hope you guys have a nice day, and may the Lion protect you. This is Wisdom of Warhammer, signing off.